It doesn't take a detective to figure out that this guy is full of it. Here we go with Cold Case Christianity by J. Warner Wallace. How the origin of life is evidence for God. And by evidence, we mean a bad argument full of logical fallacies. Here it is. Let's just do this.
How does life emerge from non-life in our universe?
That's a very good question. Why don't we ask a scientist or two how that works? I don't know. It's just seeing like, how does that happen? So we go, okay, how does X work? And it's like, I don't know. Good question. I, let's, how does life come from non-life? I don't know. And so life emerged from a chemical process in Earth's early ocean. Simple chemical precursors such as water, carbon, and hydrogen mix and mingle until they form complex polymers like DNA and RNA and protein, the building blocks of life. There you go. That's the first answer from Popular Mechanics popped up that when I Googled it. And then of course, then there's a Christian Science monitor, and then there's answers in Genesis, and then there's a whole bunch of things, and then there's Logical Science website, and then there's Encyclopedia Britannica. But there's answers that I would trust that come from science, and then there's answers that I don't trust that come from religion, because religion's already decided what the answer is, whereas science is looking for the answers and is satisfied to not have the answer and to have a mystery and say, that's okay, I don't know the answer, but I know what the answer isn't, and the answer isn't magic.
As a matter of fact, we've been conducting, scientific community has been conducting origin of life studies for many, many decades. And we're not getting any closer to an answer on that question. As a matter of fact, the more
that's not true at all. Plenty of peer-reviewed published papers exist on the origin of life and showing different ways that things could have happened. We don't know for sure what the early Earth was like per se, as far as I understand it, which my understanding is very, 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 very minimal. But yeah, so at best, if we grant what you're saying, which we shouldn't, but if we granted what you're saying, so what? We don't know yet. That doesn't mean anything. That doesn't mean we won't know tomorrow or the next day, or that we'll always not know. But it's unknown. If it's unknown, then that's it. Okay, great. And what's your point then? So we don't know. We'll grant that, tentatively speaking. Then what? Don't know equals.
more we drill down into the nature of biological life, the more difficult the question becomes. Now, when we do a good investigation of any crime scene, we ask the questions you probably asked when you were writing a good term paper in high school. What, how, when, where, why, who? These are questions we ask to determine what happened at the scene and who is our suspect. Well, the same kinds of questions could be used to examine the universe and the origin of life. And one of the biggest questions to ask is, what are we really talking about here? Now, you will see in your participants guide the difficult nature of biological life. It's pretty complicated. It's pretty complex. It's not a simple problem to solve. And one of the biggest challenges in all of biology is explaining that largest molecule known to humans called DNA.
Okay, and again, probably complicated to some extent. I guess it depends upon your knowledge. Like you may view it as very simple. Like informal logic, I'm like, yeah, this is simple stuff to me. But to somebody else, it might be really complicated. We all have our different things that we understand and that we don't understand. But okay, sure, it's complicated. How did it happen? Well, there's plenty of answers for that. Okay, RNA was first, then DNA, and there's all sorts of explanations for it. But all you're doing is saying it's complicated. It's very complicated. It's super complicated. It's not easy to get the answer. Okay, sure. And so complicated, don't know what the answer is, Very complicated. Don't know what the answer is. That's all we have so far.
So that's the what question. What we're trying to explain here is incredibly complex. Another question we might ask is where? Where do we think that life could emerge? Well, I will tell you this. When we look at all the locations that have been offered by people who are trying to determine how life originated in the universe, people have suggested it occurs in the early atmosphere of the Earth. Those actual studies have demonstrated that's a pretty tough sell. And so people have moved away from that. They said, well, maybe it occurred in the oceans or the early oceans.
Okay, now notice how he doesn't cite what studies he's talking about. Nowhere in the little description is any citations at all. It's just, linked to uh, his website or his book, and then another link to looks like another book. Yeah, it's a video series. So a link to a video series and a link to his book that he wrote. No citations whatsoever. So how do we know that he's being honest about these things? We don't. We'd have to take his word for it. Wrong gases in the atmosphere. I don't know anybody that proposed that, but maybe somebody did. Let's see. In the water, environment too hostile. Wait, what? The ocean doesn't have life in it? Really? Uh, let's see. I can't. Let's see. Phosphate's missing. It is very hard to read that, which I'm wondering if that's deliberate or not. Let's see. Environment too hostile. Oxygen problematic. Phosphates missing, handiness to even. What? I'm not sure what any of that means or what that's based on, but I'm 100% sure it's wrong. Like, I don't know that I'm sure that he is wrong about this because the ocean's full of life, so that's silly. Outer space, no. Complex molecular problematic, scarcity of prebiotic material. uh Wrong. There's minerals in asteroids. So yeah, that's wrong. Under the ground, a lack of precursors, protein formation, RNA, outer under problem, which I don't know that any of that's true. I doubt it. And then what? On the ground, environment too unstable and fragile. No, based on what? And this is a case of let's eliminate all the possibilities that we can think of. Let's eliminate all of these possibilities. Now, they're not really eliminated. None of these possibilities are actually eliminated because the science on them is out there, and we just simply have to look. And perhaps the answer is a little bit from each of these categories. Maybe it's not solely in one of these things. Maybe it's a little bit from each and every one of them. But he's like, no, 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 it can't be that, can't be that, can't be that, can't be any of this stuff. Now, I'm not going to tell you where it says that it can't be any of this stuff and what scientist says that, who agrees with it, etc. But we're just going to pretend like I've eliminated all of this. Okay, how about lava? You didn't mention lava. Okay, so it could have come from lava. Well, you didn't mention it, so I can add in lava. Because that's not under the ground. It's not on the ground. It's different. So there you go. There you go. I came up with an alternate. How about an alternate dimension? Sure, why not? If I'm gonna, but the idea here is I'm gonna eliminate all the possibilities that you can think of, even though they're not really eliminated, and then, well, then what? Let's just pretend that he's being honest, which he's not, but we're just gonna pretend that he's right, which he isn't, and say, okay, so it didn't come from this. Okay, well, then what? Well, we don't know where it came from. At best, we still don't know. We'd say, well, that's interesting. Didn't come from here, 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 here. Now what? Well, we don't. Well, maybe it came from there. Where's there? We don't know. We don't know would be the answer. We cannot fill in the gap of knowledge with some explanation no matter how compelling that explanation might seem to be, because it's an appeal to ignorance, an appeal to personal incredulity. That's all. It's I don't know, but it can't be X, Y, or Z. Okay, why? What? Well, maybe, but could it be something else? Maybe, but you'd have to show it. But we absolutely know without a doubt that the answer isn't magic. And why? How can we possibly know that? Because we don't have a demonstration of magic. Magic's not a phenomenon that we've categorized. It's not a thing that we can show to be a thing, even if it was a thing, which it probably isn't a thing. So if you said, well, but magic, it could be magic. Magic explains it. It's just poofed into existence one day. That's how it happened. Uh-huh. Okay. Where did magic come from? Well, a wizard did it. Where did the wizard come from? Wizard's always been around.
But people disagree about that. And maybe they cleared underneath ocean rocks or at the surface of the terrestrial crust. It's been so frustrating because each one of these locations offered doesn't work for a number of reasons. And as a matter of fact, each of these scientists will disagree with each other and say, well, my theory is better. No, my theory is better. There's no consensus on this at all.
Oh, really? I just wonder, uh, if we typed in like consensus on the origin of life into Google, just, like consensus on the origin. Let's see. Let's see. There's no consensus. Okay. But, okay. Let's see. Wait, no. It's a great mystery. Okay. Yeah. All right. All right. All right. Oh, he's got something here. Um, but that goes to abiogenesis. But then there's scientific inquiry. There's new evidence. There, there's questions. Okay, but that that doesn't mean anything. That just means we don't know. Okay, and but what's interesting is everything that he's saying. We're going to remember all this. We're going to remember, hey, there's no consensus. So remember these points. No consensus. This is important. Consensus on X is really important. So no consensus on X. That's really important to him, right? Okay. We're going to remember that for later.
As a matter of fact, some now have said that we cannot understand how life could emerge on Earth, so perhaps it was delivered to us on an asteroid or a meteorite from outer space, which just kind of pushes the problem off to another location, but it still begs for explanation. So on the
Yeah, we wouldn't want to push that problem further back. Goodness gracious. We don't know. Yeah, okay. And but yeah, I'm sure that your explanation is going to be something that is mundane and normal and ordinary and can be studied by science, right?
what and the where, we still have some open questions. But when we talk about why did it emerge? What could cause this? Is it a matter of random chance? Is there some aspect of physical law, of physics that made life emerge here? Well, to be honest, we looked at both of those. The odds are so strikingly long against the formation of life from nothing that's really not a good explanation.
Well, maybe the question that you're asking is wrong. Why is a subjective question that assumes intent. Why assumes there is a why to be answered. Maybe asking why is wrong. Why is that rock there? There is no why. There's a how, but there isn't necessarily a why. A why assumes intentionality. Why is that rock there? Is it there so that the bear can scratch its back? Or is it just there for no reason? Kids will typically say it's there to scratch the back of the bear. Older kids, younger adults, tend to say that it's just there. So it's the young kid brain mindset that says things have to have a why to them. Whereas as you grow older, you kind of move away from having to have a why for everything. So it's no wonder that we see and hear religion saying have a childlike look on the world. I don't know, just an idea. Yeah, I was just saying. But again, he's saying, oh, it can't be this, can't be that, can't be any of this. So we don't have a why. It can't just be by chance because that, which of course it wasn't. There was a filtering mechanism, but we're not going to talk about that. And by necessity, we're going to say no to that too because that that doesn't make sense to me. So personal incredulity or
sometimes too, when people say chance, what they really mean is I have no explanation at all. So we have to kind of think about that. And in addition to that, we cannot find physical laws of, the laws of physics that could bring together the necessary ingredients for life to emerge. We'll talk.
Yeah, actually chemistry would cover that, wouldn't it? What chemicals can combine? Carbon is it loves stuff. Carbon as an element just is it loves it loves to connect to stuff. Carbon's just like it will bond with just anything. And it's got like a whole bunch of bonds that it can do with just about anything and everything. Carbon's just it's a slut. Let's just call it what it is. Carbon is a slut. Carbon's just like, oh, I'll sleep with anybody. I don't care. Like it will just mate with everything that it's near it. Carbon's just like it loves everything. So carbon's just oh, I could connect to anything because I can. That's just what I do. And that's it. There's no why to it. It's just that's how it works. But we want it to be a why. We're going to apply this question that doesn't make sense to this thing because we want it to be a why. But why does it do it? There is no why. There's just a how. But why? No, there's just a how. That's it. It just does that. There is no why to it. Carbon is a slut because carbon is a slut. There's no other thing to it than that. It just does what it does because it does. And that's it. There you go. All right, moving on.
Talk about that in a minute. But then we have to ask the question, well, when did it occur? One thing we do know for sure in the entire history of the earth, life seems to emerge in very striking fashion all at once. The range in which life emerges on planet Earth, even according to the most atheistic scientist, is strikingly short. How do we explain the sudden emergence of species, the sudden emergence of life altogether?
Okay, this is a complete misrepresentation. Because no, we don't think that life emerged suddenly without explanation. What we have is that evidence for life that has been preserved is found. But the problem is certain types of life leave behind no evidence. So if you don't have a exoskeleton that can survive the rigors of time, then that exoskeleton will not be found by people later on. If you don't have a regular skeleton, if you're just made of fleshy bits, if you're just cartilage, like your nose is made out of cartilage, right? If you are made out of cartilage, that's your outer layer, and your inner layer has whatever, stuff floating around in that, whatever. None of that's going to leave behind any evidence for later on. So your cartilage species, a little bit harder cartilage, a little bit different cartilage, a little bit more rugged, and then you're not anything that we call cartilage anymore because you're too solid. You're not like cartilage anymore. You're not even like skin. It's not even like skin as we, it's more mineralistic now, and then it's more mineralistic, and now it's more like a rock, but now it looks like a freaking rock. And then when you, the creature that you are, you die out, and that rock thing that was around you survives, and later on somebody might think it's a rock, or they might be able to figure out that it was once a living being, but they don't see or can't find the thing that was before it because that thing wasn't as well structured as you were. So that thing is gone to history. It died out. It's been lost to time. So it appears that life emerges all at once because you have strong enough structures that can survive the rigors of time to be able to locate in the first place. And the structures that didn't survive that, well, you're not going to find those structures. So you're going to have to speculate about that stuff. You know, and well, that sucks, but that's what you're going to have to do. But you're not going to find evidence of it because it's not there to find. So you can say, we know that it started here, and we're going to guess that it started before that, but how long ago would be a guess or an estimate at best. And it didn't just come all about all at the same time, all at once, but we think that it came about slowly through time, but he doesn't like that answer. So it's going to come about all at the same time, because that's not how things work, but let's pretend that is.
So this is something that all of us are searching through to find a good answer. Well, I want to focus in on one thing that I thought, for me at least, was very compelling. And that is this molecule we talked about called DNA. It is the longest molecule known to humans. And it consists of 4 nucleotides that are arranged in a specific order in the molecule called DNA. This order is not just random, it's communicative. It is information. As a matter of fact,
it's not random now. Well, some of it's still random, but it wasn't always that way. it too evolved to get to that point. See, you're gonna ignore all the stuff that happened before it. You're gonna ignore RNA. You're gonna ignore all the things that led to it, because all of those things would disprove your point. So you're being a bad detective because you're only focusing on the thing that you want to be true and ignoring all the other things that would falsify it or explain it decently. And you're doing that deliberately in order to sell your product or your idea. If not to others, then at least to yourself. And I can say that for certainty because no, it's been explained to some extent how DNA got to be where it's at. But you're not diving into any of that. You're not showing any of that on the screen. You're not citing any scientists. You're not even saying names. You're just saying scientists. Well, which ones? Who? Can you name? Nothing at all. Because he doesn't. If you look into any of this, you'll find quickly that it disproves his ideas. If you well, you could chat with GPT, I guess, and ask it, and it will too dismiss his ideas as nonsense because there's nothing to support it. Yes, we found out things, and sure, there's mystery, but so what? All we've heard so far is we don't know at best. We don't know. Okay, and
fact, the formation of life, all of the micro machines in your cells, the formation of proteins from amino acids, all of this stuff that occurs in biology is dictated and driven by the genome, by the information, the nucleotide sequence in your DNA. Think about that for a second. If that's really information in DNA, how do we get it? Where does information come from?
And it's here we go with the language shifting and the question begging. Where does information come from? The sort of information that DNA is doing is the same sort of information that you would find on sand dunes. And what I mean by that is, if you were to take a large record player needle, and it'd have to be pretty large, and you were to have it run across sand dunes, you would produce music from it. It wouldn't be good music, but it would be music, because the bumps on the record are what produce the music. And when the record needle hits a bump, it produces a sound. So the sand dunes, which are generated by wind, by naturalistic forces, they're just chilling there. There's no why to them. They're just there. Have produced information that can be read in some way, shape, or form. Now, there lacks a filtering mechanism in that case. You would get music, but the music wouldn't sound very good. But what would happen is the giant record needle would knock down a number of dunes. It would only allow for dunes of a certain size. It would only allow dunes of a certain consistency. And so you would get rid of a lot of information with just the record needle itself, and the thing that you're the giant arm of the record needle would be knocking down dunes as it goes to play the music on in the desert, you know. And so you're filtering out certain types of music by doing that. And so over time, if you keep running it and keep running it, eventually you'll get a very consistent sound. And it still might not sound like music, but eventually you might even form a unified sound because you're running the record player, the arm of the record player and the needle over the same location over and over again. Well, you're going to smooth it down to a certain point, and then it's just going to have that sound, and it's going to be a static sound. And you could step back and say, well, wow, that's amazing. How did it form this static sound? It can't be just by, I mean, but of course you say, well, but I did that. I introduced the record needle and the record arm. Well, yes, you did. But let's imagine if it was done by a tree branch that was filling out. Not long, just a small enough, long enough tree branch to knock some sand away from a dune that was forming. So the dunes that form near that tree are always going to be a certain size because of that tree branch. And if you're sufficiently long away from that tree where you don't see the tree, you'd see these dunes forming that are always the same size. And you'd be like, well, that's really interesting. How is that a thing? How is that possible? It's like because there's a filtering mechanism that you're unaware of. And that filtering mechanism exists in nature as well. But he doesn't want you to think about that or know about that filtering mechanism because that would really ruin his arguments.
Stephen C. Meyer is a philosopher of science, and he made a very striking observation, which I think...
All right, philosopher of science. And finally, a name. Who's this guy? Why should I care? What was his name again?
From Stephen C. Meyer is a...
Stephen C. Meyer. Let's see. Stephen C. Meyer. Let's see. Okay, let's see. American author, former educator, advocate of the pseudoscience of intelligent design, and helped found the Center for Science and Cultural Discovery Institute, which is the main organization behind the intelligent design movement. Okay, so not only are you citing a philosopher, you're citing a creationist. Brilliant. So when you do finally name names, you name a creationist. You're a crappy detective. You really are. You're the shittiest detective around. Also, your argument sucks. So,
philosopher of science, and he made a very striking observation, which I think is pretty sound, and that is that we don't have a single example anywhere in the history of science, anywhere in the history of the universe, in which information has ever come from anything other than intelligence. Do you think physical laws can produce information? Some people would say yes.
yes.
Well, that depends on what kind of information you're actually looking at. So I wanted to describe for you the 4 levels of information, or the 5 levels of information, to show you how complex DNA information is. And
enough. It's complicated. You don't understand it. You've cited a known creationist as your only citation so far. So, yeah, you got nothing. This isn't evidence for God at all. None of the complexity, none of that is evidence for anything other than it's complicated. and that you don't understand it. All you're doing is proving your ignorance on the subject. Okay. And so what? So what if it's complicated? So what if you don't understand it? How does that then therefore equal God? And remember what he said, no consensus on the thing mattered to him. Well, there's no consensus about God, is there? So that negates his God too, doesn't it? Oh well. All right. Well, look, I think that there's more to this video. It's 11 minutes long. But there's not more I can add, I don't think, other than pointing out the fallacies he's already done, which is nothing more appeal to ignorance, appeal to personal incredulity, bald assertions, lack of citation, citation to the wrong authority, citation to an authority that is not even an authority, God of the gaps, nothing here. The rest of it is scientific stuff that I really am not qualified to talk about. I can't explain DNA and how it came about. I'm not that, I don't know that stuff. And he's just going to keep going with how complicated it is, which is a bug, not a feature. You don't want things to be complicated. If you're a designer, you want things to be simple so that they don't break down. Well, but God's a bad designer, I guess. Yeah. All right. That's it for now. I'm going to be done with this one. I know I usually do the whole video. We'll see how this works. We'll see if anyone is annoyed by that or not. Let me know in the comments. See you next time. Bye for now.